Check out the Full Press Hockey Podcast with Jim Biringer, the best in the business. It's going to be great.
Everyone, welcome to the Full Press NHL Podcast. I'm your host, Jim Biringer, the voice of Full Press Hockey. I'm joined by Matthew Blittner of Sportsology. He works with Russ Cohen. You've heard Russ on the program before. Matthew, thanks for having and coming on the show today.
My pleasure, Jim. Thanks for having me. And, I see all the Devil stuff and hockey stuff behind you. Let's go out and have a good show, hopefully better than how everyone's performing in the background.
Yeah, exactly. You know it. Look, we're going to start there. You and I, we see each other a lot because we're both at the Devils games. And let's start with the New Jersey Devils. Look, they get a nice win over Anaheim, a get-right game, if you want to call it, as they say in the world of sports. What have you been seeing from this team? Because you and I may be on the same page. We may not be on the same page. What have you been seeing from this team this season so far?
I see a team that looks very much in between. The New Jersey Devils, everyone said last year, it's the goaltending and the defense that's holding them back. Okay, fair point. That is what was holding them back. So they went out and got Jacob Markstrom. They went out and got Brendan Dillon. They went out and got Brett Pesce. Obviously, Pesce only just returned to the lineup the other day. Luke Hughes obviously missed some time. But, they filled in admirably with some with Kovacevic, who I don't think much was expected of him. In fact, we talked about it with Sheldon Keefe in the post game after the Ducks game, and he said, Kovacevic went from a guy who, was probably going to be the seventh defenseman in training camp to now, he's playing consistent top 4 minutes and you can't get him out of the lineup. So, that's gone pretty well for them. But if you look at it, something is still off with this team. Yes, Jack Hughes has, he's getting his points. Yes, Nico Hischier is on a heater of all heaters to start the season goal-scoring wise. Stefan Nason, nice key pickup, returning to the team after like a year and a half away. He's been a surprise offensively with how much he's putting in there. Yes, but Brad, of course, is doing well. Dawson Mercer is off to a slow start, but, Timo Meyer's got, a few points in there. And yet somehow they're still missing something. Jacob Markstrom has not been lights out, but it was a mistake for anyone to think that he would be. I mean, yes, he's been a starting goaltender in this league for a number of years now, but Jacob Markstrom was never the guy. When you think about the top 5 best goaltenders in the league in any given year, okay, yeah, there might have been 1 or 2 years where Jacob Markstrom might have taken the number 5 spot in that. But he's not since it's World Series time, he's not an ace. He is not, he's not Igor Shesterkin. He's not Andrei Vasilevsky. He's not Ilya Sorokin. He's not one of those guys. He's a very good goaltender. He's not great. So, maybe we let the expectations, and of course the media is as guilty of this as the fans are, saying, he's going to come in and be the savior. But they still needed more than that. On defense, again, they had injuries to Pesce and to Luke Hughes, who both of them just came back the other night. But even so, they haven't quite been a sound defensive team. Yes, they're still trying to get adjusted to Sheldon Keefe's system. I know Keefe said the other day about how, we've had 9 games in 16 days. We've only gotten a chance to practice twice. Look, it's true. It's also an excuse. I know he said, it's not an excuse, but this is just the fact of the matter. Yes, it is the fact of the matter. But the way he said it comes off as an excuse. You know what? Yes, they went over to Prague. They had to play Buffalo. And then they came back over, and it was a very disjointed start to the season. Okay. But they're still not there yet in terms of things. They're still getting their compete level still an issue, which Sheldon Keefe has mentioned. They still they're not tough to play against, really. They still try to get, I don't want to say too pretty with the puck, but, sometimes it can work out. If you look at one of the goals that they scored against the Ducks, on the delayed penalty, I believe it was Hischier's first goal of the night. It was nothing but pretty passing, which is great. But that's not going to happen so much. And they haven't quite figured out how to win the puck battles, win along the boards. Will it come? It's possible. Even probable right now. But something's still off with the New Jersey Devils, and what everyone thought was going to save them in terms of the acquisitions in the offseason has not quite done so and was probably overblown.
No, I agree with that. I mean, look, I think Jacob Markstrom could play better. That's 100% correct. I think he can be playing a lot better than he has, but I also think the team in front of him could be playing a lot better too. Again, the Ducks was kind of a get right game, right? To get before you go on a Western road trip through Canada. They haven't played well going on home ice going back to last year, right? You get your second win, you beat a banged up Utah team, you beat a bad, Anaheim team who, is resilient and can play good night in, night out. They're going to make games competitive. It's not like they're going to roll over. They were on a back-to-back. You're going to play well. But I agree. I think defensively, they got to play a little bit better. Consistently, every game has to look the same. One night, you can't look great and look like world beaters. And then the next night, you don't know what you're doing. And you come out flat and you're trailing and you're chasing the game. You can't do that every night. Good teams, and maybe the expectations, and maybe they're reading the paper clippings and the Nick Saban rat poison, if you want to. But the expectations of this team when they made all these acquisitions to get better was, okay, well, we expect this team to be back where they were in 2023, which was in the playoffs. And are they a 112-point team? Probably not, but they're not the team that we saw last year. I think they're somewhere in between, but I still think they're a playoff team. And yes, can Markstrom play better? Absolutely. But they need to play better in front of him. And guys have to understand their responsibilities. And I agree with you. The cuteness, the passing, the things, they still, when teams like Carolina and Toronto and Tampa play that aggressive, clog the neutral zone type of system, they still don't know how to break it. And the turnovers end up in the back of their net.
And look, everything you said is true, but I want to take exception with one thing that you said.
Absolutely.
You said that the Anaheim Ducks, who, yes, they're a bottom 5 team last few years and probably will be again this year, you called it a get-right game. Well, the New York Islanders have been struggling much the same way, probably even more so than the New Jersey Devils this year. And yet, the Ducks are beating them. I believe the score is 2-1 right now. So, could the Islanders come back and win? It's possible. No one's saying that they can't. But I don't know. I can't call the Ducks a get-right game when, they have the young offensive kids who can, put on a show, so to speak. Are they going to beat the elite teams in the league? Absolutely not. Maybe once in a blue moon just because in Gary Bettman's NHL, any team can win on any given night. But it's not you can't call the Ducks a get-right game, because if they were a get-right game, the Islanders would be rolling over them. Right?
That's very all right. That's a fair point. Okay, so let's take the phrase "get-right game" and make it maybe go find your game, or do something to that perspective where you can start playing your style.
So it's a show some progress.
Yeah, show some progress type game, right? Because you have to go and play better. You got to play consistently. As Sheldon Keefe said, he didn't like the third period. Guys have played a lot of hockey. Guys just want to get out of there. But I thought,
go up by 3 goals.
Yeah, exactly. Your mind goes 10 minutes left, whatever. But listening to what Nason said, and I think he's played well. I think he's probably played better than a lot of people thought he was going to play. Cotter was a good addition. But Nason, what struck me in his post game was that he's talking about in front of the net front presence, winning the battles, getting greasy. That's something the Devils haven't had the last couple of years. And maybe they haven't had it since Miles Wood left. They still need a face-off guy, but that's a different topic for a different time. But I like what he brings to this team, and I think getting those greasy, grimy goals in front of the net is really going to help this team succeed this year.
First of all, I believe his exact word was buttery.
Buttery. Well, that was what he called his goal.
Have you seen Nito Hischier lately?
But outside of Nico,
90%
and letting
while the Islanders were at Prudential Center playing the Devils. He said, a lot of teams, especially the elite teams nowadays, are trying to find one of their three defensive pairs that instead of having the typical one stay at home, one join the rush, where both guys are join the rush types. That way they bring the offense, they overwhelm, if the matchup is right. And you're going to see, since it is a copycat league, as he said, you're going to see more and more teams, especially since the elite teams are the ones doing it. You're going to see more teams trying that. No, you're not going to have all three pairs where all six defensemen are just join the rush, no one stays home. That's not going to happen.
No.
But if you can have one pair of both of them where they can both join the rush, and if you can get a favorable matchup based upon either the change or whatever it is in timing, you can overwhelm the other teams and really start to score. And Pesci, look, I know Sarah Sivian, formerly of The Athletic and now at Bleacher Report, used to love reporting on Pesci's exploits on the ice, on social media, but he's not going to do that with Luke. Yes, he can contribute a little bit. He's not going to do that with Luke Hughes. Luke Hughes, maybe, I don't know that you try him with Dougie Hamilton because they'll get caved in possession-wise. They'll get absolutely caved in from a defensive standpoint. But if you could unlock Luke Hughes' potential if you had him and another offensive-minded defenseman, maybe not for the full game, if the matchup is right, you send them both out there. And I'm not saying on the power play. I'm saying at 5-on-5, you send them both out there and you let them work their magic. And maybe you do it while you have Nico Heischer's line on. That way, at least, it's an offensive line of forwards, but they can at least be defensively responsible somewhat where, if Luke and Mystery X partner get caught down low, at least Nico or someone can get back and help until the cavalry arrives.
No, I like that. I mean, that does make sense. You see it, like Vegas has a pair, I believe. Tampa had a pair for a while that did that. So, yeah.
The Rangers right now, you got Adam Fox, and I mean, normally he would play with Ryan Lindgren, who is a stay-at-home guy, but he's with Keandre Miller right now, and the reason they're trying that is because two offensive-minded guys, and the Rangers are off to, 6-1-1 start?
Yes, exactly. And potentially Ryan Lindgren may not be there next year. So you have to see what you have potentially with a guy like Miller and Fox, which could work. And it's currently working right now for the New York Rangers. I mean, again, we don't know who Mystery X is. Could it be somebody on the team already? Do they have to find that guy? I mean, we know Seamus Casey's down in the AHL. He's got time to develop. Simon Nemec hasn't played the last couple of games. He's been a healthy scratch.
Not an offensive
No, he's not an offensive-minded guy. And I got to get your thoughts on Nemec real quick because I was having a conversation with somebody today, and it brought my attention to what happened years ago with Adam Larson, who was picked high, 4th overall by the Devils. Nemec was 2nd overall. It just reminds me of him where they kept him out. He didn't play. Then when he played, the mistakes happened or they didn't like his game, and then he'd be back in the press box again. Feels like either you play him or you sit him or you send him down. Like you got to figure out what you want to do with him. Either he's going to be a mainstay in your lineup or you feel like he needs to develop. Because to me, again, there's scouts, there's other guys that do this. I'm a guy with a computer and a podcast. But to me, you have to figure out.
Short, Mr. Recreational Goaltender.
I'm not a recreational goaltender. I'm a hockey player who's a center. But just to me, it feels like they should learn from the mistakes that they had in the past, especially with a guy like Larson, who has thrived outside of New Jersey.
Well, also different regime, so you can't really learn from the mistakes. It's a completely different regime. But in regards to Nemec, I mean, he probably came up too early last year. I'm going to remove the probably. He did too early last year. He came up due to injuries. He came up because they also were thin defensively once they let Severson go and let Graves go. And, Siegenthaler broke his foot. They had no one. So they obviously had to dip into their prospect pool. And, he was the only guy. And you saw he had his moments last year where he was good. You saw his moments where he was great. And you saw his moments where he had a lot of trouble. And now you're seeing that if he would, he probably developed a few bad habits like any kid, rookie, second-year guy will do in hockey. And in fact, in all sports, really, when they get called up or dropped too soon. Sheldon Keefe is not a coach who is going to just wait out the growing pains. He is a coach who he knows he was brought in here to win. He knows what the expectations are for this team this year. He's not going to let a kid ruin it. And, Nemec is getting some tough love from that right now. But then also, you had the injuries, to Pesce and to Hughes, which allowed Kovacevic, who, look, do I think Kovacevic, based upon his profile, is going to continue at the path that he's on currently? No. I think he's better than a 7th defenseman. I don't think he is a consistent top 4 guy who is going to contribute most nights on offense, whether it's an assist or a goal or, doing the little things that don't show up on the score sheet. But he really stepped into that spot that was probably Nemec's spot. That's probably what happened. And I mean, Keefe's never going to say it. Fitzgerald is never going to say it. You can give them all the truth serum you want. Neither of them are going to admit to it. But if Kovacevic had not done as well as he did in the preseason and early on this year, if he had just fulfilled that 7th defensive profile, Nemec is in there every single night. You cannot convince me otherwise.
No, I agree with that 100%.
With Hughes and Pesci out, absolutely, Nemec was going to be given every bit of leeway in there. Now, once Luke and Brett came back, okay, all gloves are off.
Yeah.
And sure, they're both back and he's sitting. But he's sitting because Kovacevic is still in the lineup. If Kovacevic was not in the lineup, he's in there. Now, I don't know what their pairings would be. They'd probably mix it up a little bit more. I don't know that they would have... I think Dillon and Hamilton would probably stay. I don't know that Siegenthaler would then just automatically pair with Nemec and then have Pesci with Luke. I think they might actually switch it up where they would have Siegenthaler with Luke and have Pesci with Nemec potentially. And I know from a left-right standpoint, those two things might not match up perfectly, but they're pros, they're defensemen who they can adjust. I mean, this isn't, it's not hard and fast that your guys can't adjust at all. And if they really couldn't adjust, then okay, then maybe you break up the Dillon and Hamilton and you see what's gonna work and what.
No, that's a fair
all
point.
about opportunity. Okay, Wally Pipp was the Yankee first baseman. He was a good first baseman. He wasn't a Hall of Famer by any means, but he was a good first baseman. Got hurt. Some guy named Lou Gehrig came in. 2,130 games later, he was still in there, and Wally Pipp was a distant memory. And if the internet had existed back then, he would have became a meme.
Yeah, probably.
Now, I'm not saying that Nemec has been Wally Pipped by Kovacevic, far from it. But at the moment, it's sort of what's happened. Kovacevic is running with it, and Nemec, they should send him down so he can continue to develop, get some bid minutes. And then inevitably, when somebody gets hurt, because it's hockey, it's pro sports, someone's going to get hurt. There's no such thing as getting through a season with no injuries. It doesn't happen. And then you call him back up. Or, the best case scenario, you send him down, and unlike Pierre Engvall with the Islanders, who was sent down and then called back up just because, Nemec goes down, shows out, balls out, shows that he deserves to be in the National Hockey League, and forces their hand.
Yeah.
That'd be a win-win, because then you see, okay, he's absolutely ready. Matthew Barzal, obviously different position. Islanders called him up. He didn't really do too great. They sent him down. They could have left him down for 2 more years, 3 more years. He forced the issue. Look at the year he had in Seattle that year. He went off that year. He forced their hand. Let him go down and force their hand, or show that he really isn't deserving. Let him show that. And I don't think he's an Adam Lawson. I think he's better than Adam Lawson. If he goes down and shows that he's still not ready, okay, then you start making that comparison. But let him go down there and force the issue.
It's more of the comparison of the development and the traction of the player, similar to what we saw with Holtz. I mean, last year where, we want him up, but we don't want to send him down. We want him to be around NHL guys, but, he's kind of a tweener, to use a wrestling phrase, because everybody knows that
about wrestling terms now.
Yeah, exactly. No, but they're like, is he too good for the AHL? Is he an NHLer? We really don't know. But when we have him in, we want to make him a player that he's not, because we drafted him to be a winger. Talking to some people, that's what he was. He was a scoring winger. No one expected him to be this defensive player. Yes, everybody's supposed to develop, your defensive side of the puck. But it's like, okay, guys, like, what are we doing? If you don't think he's ready to be in the lineup, or you don't like him in the lineup, why don't we send him down to let him develop, because we know what he can do down there. That'll help him. Similar to what Nemec is, similar to what we saw with Casey, right? He comes in, again, because of opportunity, because of injury, because everybody knew Seamus Casey was probably not starting in the NHL this season. He was going to be in the AHL. That's where he probably belonged. But again, opportunity knocks, he takes it, he runs with it. And then you could see that it was starting to catch up with him, as Keith said, and then they send him down, which is good for him because that's probably where that's where he needed to be this season. He was most likely going to be there anyway. So again, just trying to develop the players the right way. That way, down the road, we traded him, and then again, Larsson's turned into this noble veteran defenseman who thrived outside of the Devils organization to a point. Right, he was never going to be the Victor Hedman comparison that they had when he was drafted, but he's turned into a really good NHL defenseman.
Absolutely, and look, there's nothing wrong with anything that you said there, and I think it's going to be the one time that, at least early this season, because I'm not going to try to predict the future, that we're just going to be in complete agreement, and I know that doesn't sound fun, especially you normally healing it up and me straight up corporate babyface, but yeah. I can't dispute anything you just said.
No, I mean, it just, you just look at it, right? Because you see, how they've done things, and you just hope the best for the players and the timelines that everything matches. And look, the Devils have a big 3-game road trip out into Western Canada. Vancouver, Calgary, Edmonton, those are some points that you need to grab coming back home, especially with a tight, top of the Metro Division. And I'll throw Washington in there because, Washington knows how to play within this division. They've beaten the Devils. The Devils have lost to the Islanders and the Capitals. So it's not like it's some cakewalk division for this team. The Rangers are still there. Carolina's better. I forgot they lost to Carolina too. And again, that was a game they probably had no business being in because Jacob Markstrom played out of his mind. Would you agree with that?
Oh, Markstrom, that was, like I said, way back at the beginning of this podcast. Markstrom has his moments.
Yeah.
And he had his moment there. I mean, look, I don't think a lot of people, in fact, I know a lot of people were discounting or counting out Carolina this year because they lost a number of key guys. You know what? You can't do it. You cannot on this God's green earth, you cannot ever count out a Rod Brindamore coached team. You can't do it. You could give him, no offense to you, Jim, you could give Rod Brindamore 23 Jim Biringers as his roster.
I'm a good hockey player.
Identical clones of you, and he's still going to the playoffs.
Hey, I'll take that.
That is
I'm
not
a fairly good hockey player.
Level.
Hey, I've never played in the NHL. Trust me. But I'll work my butt off. And that's a good comparison. I'll take that.
Rod Brindamore, he's going to get the most out of it. You could put 23 sacks of potatoes on that roster, and he could somehow coach those 23 sacks of inanimate potato objects to the playoffs. He's not going to win the Stanley Cup with them, but he's going to get them there.
No, and I mean, look, the Canes and the Rangers, obviously everybody puts Devils, Rangers, Canes, whatever, in some top 3 order. But obviously Washington, right? Like, what were your expectations for the Capitals this year? I mean, I'm kind of like a goat in this thing. I had them in the playoffs. I thought because of the moves that they made, I kind of was in the minority. But I just want to hear what your opinion on the Capitals were heading into this season.
I'll be very honest. I thought the Caps weren't going to sniff the playoff picture.
Okay.
I know they just got in last year, the final day, and no one was saying that they couldn't do that again. But, if you look at that roster, who do they have? Yes, I know Alex Ovechkin, but this is not Alex Ovechkin of 3 years ago. This is Alex Ovechkin who, I'm going to compare him a little bit to Hank Aaron, God rest his soul. He's Hank Aaron towards the end of that chase, for the record. Still a good player. Don't take him lightly, because he's still going to hurt you. But he's not that all-world guy anymore. And the Caps are not that team on paper. Again, hockey's not played on paper, though. They're somehow making it happen. I don't see the Caps being there at the end of the season. I think they are very much going to be similar to what Philadelphia was last year. Philadelphia got off to a hot start. In fact, Washington's not even off to the type of start that Philadelphia was last year. Philadelphia was making people go, recheck their Stanley Cup predictions last season.
And we're seeing what Philadelphia is all about this year.
Yeah, but Washington, I think they're going to ride a little bit. They're not going to go like the Flyers last year where they were riding high and then crashed. That's not going to happen. Washington's going to be a fairly flat line, maybe a couple bumps, maybe a couple dips. They're going to be a little consistent, and then they're just going to slowly fade, and they'll probably miss the playoffs by a point or two. And the only reason I have them missing the playoffs, because I still think they're going to finish in the top 4. I still think they're going to finish number 4 in the Metro. The only reason I have them missing the playoffs is because you look over at the Atlantic Division. You've got Boston who's going to go to the playoffs. You've got Toronto who's going to go to the playoffs.
Yep.
You've got Tampa who's going to go to the playoffs.
Yep.
You've got Florida who's going to go to the playoffs.
That's 4 teams right there.
That's 4 teams right there. So that leaves one wild card spot left. And to be quite honest, Detroit's going back to the playoffs this year.
Okay.
They're going to go in as a second wild card. They're not going to, they'll get bounced in the first round. I'm not predicting all of a sudden Detroit's going to go back to their glory days. Absolutely not. Detroit is going back to the playoffs, and Washington is going to be the team that suffers for it. The Rangers are going to go out of the Metro. Carolina's going to go out of the Metro. I still think the Devils have what it takes to be in the top 3 there. I don't think the Islanders have what it takes to get into the top 3 unless something drastically changes. I mean, if you look at it last year, they blew so many leads. And this year, they're blowing leads worse than they did last year in terms of at the pace that they're doing.
And they still can't score consistently.
They're on pace right now. We crunched the numbers in the press spot in the media workroom the other night. They're on pace to blow a lead and have to go to overtime or shootout 47 times this year. Now, small sample size, of course,
Right, but still, 47 times.
They are on pace. They are on pace right now that if they do everything exactly the way the math says that they would, which obviously we all know is not how the world works, they are on pace to go to overtime or shootout 47 times this year. Think about that for a second. You're talking more than half your games are going to go to extra time. Even if they somehow regress that down and learn how to defend, what are they going to cut that in half and they're still going to go to overtime and a shootout 22 times?
That's crazy. Unbelievable.
That would
unbelievable.
Be insane if they did that.
No, 100%. I agree with you on that.
And I mean, I think they just gave up another goal to the Ducks. The Islanders, I don't think have it. They've squeaked into the playoffs the last 2 years on the last day. I just don't. I'm not saying they're going to fall out and they're going to miss by 5 points. I think they're going to just miss. And that's what's going to happen. There's a storm brewing on Long Island. Fans are not showing up in the arena. There's already, and look, I don't want to lend any credence to fan-made Twitter keyboard or Warrior reports at all, but something's not right on Long Island. So I'm gonna take them as not making the playoffs. Washington's not making the playoffs. Pittsburgh's not making the playoffs. Okay, maybe next year if if Kyle Dubas turns the team around, they're not making the playoffs this year. And I know Sidney Crosby's probably going to tune into this and be like, you know what, just to screw the both of them, I'm going to go out, I'm going to have 120 points, I'm going to win the Hart Trophy, and we're going to go to the playoffs. Sid, if you're out there listening, I mean no disrespect, but the rest of your team's not going to the playoffs.
You can go to the playoffs. That's fine, Sid. You go to the playoffs, but the rest of the team isn't going. Pittsburgh's just awful.
Yeah. Philadelphia is not going to the playoffs this year. And, Columbus, yeah, they're playing some inspired hockey at times this year. I think that has a little something to do with, them trying to galvanize their team. This is, I don't want to call it a lost year for Columbus, but you have to write it off as a mulligan. Just with everything that happened. You have to just write this off. This year in their history, just whatever wins they give you, enjoy it. And other than that, just wipe it from the record books.
No, I agree.
It's going to be, instead of 4 teams from each division making the playoffs, it's going to be 5 from the Atlantic. It's going to be 3 from the Metro. Case in point, that's it. Case closed.
All right, so and you mentioned Columbus, obviously, just tough this year, and right, and it's a nice story what they're doing. They're playing hard, right? They're getting the wins. Look, the leadership, the group that they have in that room, they're not going to fold. This isn't just going to be like, they're not going to be woe is me, right? They're playing inspired hockey right now, and you said it right. You mentioned the Islanders. I got to ask you this, right? And look, I've taken a lot of heat for my opinion on a certain Hall of Fame general manager.
Oh boy.
Lou Lamoriello. I've taken some fair share of heat because, well, you know me as a heel, but I sometimes, to a point, some of his signings on the island have been reminiscent to his time and his tenure towards the end of New Jersey. Tries to keep things alive, doesn't want to embrace that rebuild, and thinks he can win a certain way that was pre-salary cap. And you can clearly see that the Islanders probably should have done something sooner than they did. And I know they just get in, but they don't win. And yes, they went to back-to-back conference finals in those COVID years. And everybody thought they'd get back there the following year, and they just didn't. But I agree with you. Something's going on. Patrick Waugh is either something, there's something, a miscommunication somewhere. There's something going on. Because I think it's time for a GM change in Long Island.
Well, look, and I'm not going to tell you how I know this, but this is a fact that I'm about to say. And, you can try to dispute it all you want. This is a fact that respectfully no one was reporting on because they were told to keep it quiet. But last year, prior to last season, so prior to the 23-24 hockey season, there were people in the Islanders organization who very much tried to oust the general manager. This is not conjecture. This is not speculation. This is a legitimate fact. There were some very powerful people in the organization who were trying to oust Lamoriello. However, they did not have the final say, and Lamoriello kept his job. So, Lamoriello, I don't want to say he's on thin ice, because that would just be foolhardy to ever say about someone of his stature. He still deserves and commands respect in the National Hockey League. I'm not going to slander the guy. But and it's not so much that he hasn't figured out how to win in the salary cap era. It's that he still feels that you can win a certain way. And yes, you can. Look, we all know that during the regular season, you cannot win consistently with the grinding atmosphere, the grinding type of style that eats teams live, because it takes too much of a toll. But you look at every single Stanley Cup champion in the last however many years you want to go back. If you want to go all the way back to the beginning of the salary cap, you can. They all are able, when the chips are down and when the lights shine brightest in the playoffs, they're able to play that type of defensive game. Okay? The LA Kings in 2012 and 2014, they were able to grind you into dust.
Yep.
The Tampa Bay Lightning got embarrassed by the Blue Jackets coming off of their historic season. Got swept. They couldn't play that way. What they do, they came back, they learned how to play that way. They won 2 straight and then went to a third. Colorado, unbelievable offensive team. You know what? They didn't have a good goaltender. You know how they managed to do it? They overwhelmed with offense, and when the chips were down and they needed to, they buckled down defensively in front of Kemper, and they managed to shut them down. How did Vegas win? Vegas managed to shut teams down. How did Pittsburgh win during their back-to-backs in 16 and 17? They had great offense. They managed to learn to shut them down. Washington, 2018, managed to learn, shut them down. St. Louis in 2019, same thing. All these teams knew how to flip that switch. And, maybe they didn't play that grinding style all year long, but that grinding style that Lamoriello wants is still important to get a team to victory. but you can't play only that style.
Mm-hmm.
You've made some signings that have not worked out. I don't know what he was thinking giving Angevall that long contract. Mayfield, I understand why he gave him the contract. He's loyal. He's a loyal guy. I mean, look, what player, what person in this world, sports or not, wouldn't want their employer to be loyal to them? Everyone would love for that to be the case. So I'm not going to knock the guy for being loyal. But he hasn't brought in the guys who are going to help them learn to play in more than just one way. In order to win in today's National Hockey League, you have to be able to play in multiple different ways. I just spoke with Billy Guerin the other night when the Isles played the Devils for a column that just came out today on Sportsology about Four Nations tournament for Team USA.
Great read, by the way, everybody. Go check it out. Great read by Matthew.
Thank you. And he even said, you've got to be able to play multiple different ways. He said, you've got to be able to play fast. You've got to be able to play defensively. You've got to be able to play tight checking. You've got to be able to play special teams. You have to be able to play every different way. Look at the New York Rangers, not just last year, but 2 years before that when during Gerard Gallant's first season as their head coach. What did they, last year and that 2 years prior to that, both have in common?
Defense.
No. They both had tremendous goaltending in Igor Shesterkin. They both had an incredible power play. They both had a penalty kill who could score. And they could not play 5-on-5.
That's a fair point.
Defense was okay-ish. Okay.
Last year, their defense was a lot better because all I heard from Ranger fans and Ranger Pete was like, oh, they're playing a slow, boring game. I'm like, okay, so you don't want to win hockey games then. Okay.
But they could not flip that switch.
No.
They couldn't score 5-on-5. Defense, they had their moments. I'll call them a top 10 defense in the league, but they certainly were not in the top 5 in that. But they couldn't win. They went to the conference final twice, and they couldn't get over the hump. You know why? Because Tampa knew how to play every way possible, and last year Florida most certainly knew how to play every way possible.
Oh, yeah, they did.
What have the Rangers done this year? They've learned, maybe not the whole way, but they're scoring 5-on-5. They are finally scoring 5-on-5. And yes, has the power play and penalty kill taken a slight dip? Okay, yeah, but it's early in the season. Let's see where the numbers are at the end of the season, because I guarantee you it'll still be back there. Igor Shesterkin will still be that guy. They are playing 5-on-5 the way they need to play 5-on-5. Now, can they keep it up? Who knows? Big mystery. But the fact that they're doing so right now should have fans of the blue shirts very, very happy with them because they're taking that step. Now, can they maintain that? We'll see. But they're taking that next step.
No, 100% agree with you. I've seen it. I've watched some of the Ranger games this year. Definitely 5-on-5 is a lot better. Yeah, everybody wants more from their power play. But again, the way that team's constructed, you lean on Igor Shesterkin and you're going to win hockey games. And I agree with you because that little rumbling that nugget you talked about, Lou, before, yeah, there was definitely some rumblings if they didn't make the playoffs last year. Again, was he going to be officially gone? Don't know, but there were a lot of rumblings that if the Islanders didn't make the playoffs, he was going to be not there anymore. And again, who knows if that carries over into this season? Again, still a lot left because teams don't know who they are. One thing I will say, there's a reason why Pittsburgh hasn't won a playoff series since 2018, and they got ousted in the playoffs 2019 and on against teams they probably shouldn't have lost to, i.e. the Montreal Canadiens in 2020 in the qualifying round. Goaltending and defense let them down. Yes, they can score, but they couldn't hold leads. And you're seeing it again this year. Look, we hate to say it, right? This team probably should have started their rebuild a couple of years ago, retool on the fly, whatever you want to say. But, again, you have big names there. You have guys that want to stick together. What are you going to do? And here we are. This is the price of winning. Pittsburgh, ugly. Goaltending's not good. defensive structure in front of him is not good. This is all not on Kyle Dubas, but some of it is because, look, you went out and got Erik Karlsson. Did you really need Erik Karlsson? Probably not. Similar to, did you really need John Tavares in Toronto? Probably not. He's been fine, but still, again, $11 million could have gone elsewhere to fix the needs of the Pittsburgh Penguins. Some of the signings have been questionable, and you have a lot of not movable contracts in Pittsburgh. And here we are with a team that's old and slow and can't compete. And yes, every now and then they're going to play great, but most nights they're not.
Look, it's interesting. Kyle Dubas, and I've spoken with him a few times over the years, he's a very smart guy. I will give him that. And I am someone who cannot stand analytics in sports.
Me too.
I cannot stand sabermetrics in sports. And he is a prototypical analytics sabermetrics type of guy. And I know hockey, it's very different from baseball and that, so take it with a grain of salt. I am the type of person who I cannot stand sabermetrics or analytics, but you listen to Kyle Dubas talk, and when you're talking with him one-on-one, forget about an interview setting, just talking with the guy one-on-one, the guy is smart. He knows his hockey. He is smart. His IQ makes you feel that, and he has a way of showing his IQ without making you feel that you are dumber than a bag of bricks. Although, when you go back and look at it afterwards, you say to yourself, wow, I really don't know more than a bag of bricks. But I'm surprised that he would go out and get Erik Karlsson when he did. Because if you look at it, what was the flaw with Erik Karlsson in San Jose? He was sharing power play time with Brent Burns, who they are both alpha dogs on the power play. Erik Karlsson in Ottawa was the guy. And you know what? He put together a hell of a career. I know injuries down. He put together a hell of a career. He then went, and I know everyone's like, oh, we want to build a super team. We want to bring, two guys together. It should work. It didn't. Because they're both used to dominating with the puck. And then all of a sudden you have them eating into each other's puck share. And it caused them both to suffer. And it caused the Sharks to suffer. So what happened? San Jose dealt Brent Burns went down to Carolina. And Erik Karlsson went back and won the Norris. Yes, he stayed healthy, which was a big part of it. But he went out and did what Erik Karlsson can do. So why would Pittsburgh go, after seeing what happened in San Jose, make the same mistake? They brought him in to play with Chris Letang. Chris Letang was the quarterback of the power play in Pittsburgh and had been for, 15, 16 years.
Yep.
That's a rookie move and rookie mistake to make. I expect that move out of someone who doesn't know the game, who thinks, oh, let's just build a super team. Let's just get all the star power. Let's bring them together. But that's not Kyle Dubas.
No.
Kyle Dubas is smart. I don't want to use the G word of genius because I feel it's thrown around a little too much, but the guy is smart. So it shocks me to my very core that he went out and made that rookie mistake.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, they kept the core together in Toronto for how many years after first round playoff failures? So I mean,
that's also coming from above. That was
right. Now, do you think it was coming from above in Pittsburgh, or do you think that's a Kyle? Yeah,
Fenway Sports Group, absolutely. Fenway Sports Group did not want Malkin suiting up somewhere else. They didn't want Letang suiting up somewhere else, and I think the Letang thing was fine. Malkin will probably be the contract that hinders them more than Letang.
That's what I thought. I thought, okay, you sign Raquel, you sign Letang, okay, Malkin's gone. And then when Malkin gets to 6.1 for 4, I'm like, all right, what are we doing here? Like, it was time. Like, it's time. Like, Fleury left.
Was more concerned with putting fannies in the seats than they were with building a winner. If Kyle Dubas, I believe this in my heart and soul, and you're not going to convince me otherwise. If he was given free reign to make the decisions to shape Pittsburgh's roster however he saw fit, I think Letang is still there. I think Crosby obviously gets resigned. I don't think Malkin's there. I think they go into maybe not a complete tear down like what you saw out of Chicago and Anaheim. I think he does enough to where, he gets rid of the guys who needed to go. And maybe not this year would they be on the upswing again, but that next year they would probably be back up on.
So are you telling me that Jake Getzel's still there? Is Jake Getzel still there?
That's an interesting one. It really would have depended on whatever other cap moves he would have made, because we don't know who he would have gone out and gotten instead of Malkin, instead of Raquel. We don't know what other moves he would have made. So it really depends on what other cap moves there would have been. I think that Dubas probably doesn't go as high on the average annual value with Gensel as Tampa ended up going. But Gensel didn't really want to leave. So would he have potentially taken a hometown discount? It's possible. I'm not saying it's likely, but it's possible. And so we don't know, what other moves he would have made in that way. If he would have just gone out and gotten some fringe pieces around the roster to gear up for, the 2 or 3 year lull before they get competitive again, he probably is able to re-sign Gensel if he takes a small discount. But we don't know what he would have done.
No, that's a fair point because, again, we don't know what Getzel would have got. We don't know the moves they would have made. Again, the moves they made this season weren't the greatest. Again, was he calling all the shots? Probably not. And again, this one, the follow-up on this, I've had again, you don't know. You're not in the mind of a hockey player. Sidney Crosby's even said he has to play a little bit better. But do you think the fact that Getzel not being there has affected some of his play to begin the season?
No. Not in the time. First of all, they traded him at the deadline last year.
Right.
And Crosby still played just fine.
Right, exactly. Okay.
Crosby played without Gensel plenty in his career. Now, obviously, that was a younger Sid. That was when Sid was still Sid the kid, because he was still a kid. But, Crosby makes other people. Crosby is not made by other people.
Okay, that's a fair point.
We're talking about a guy, who he made Rust. He made Rust into
Kunitz, Rust, all these guys.
Into a great player, into an excellent player. You could put you and me as Crosby's line mates, and you know what? You're going to probably score 20 and have 20 assists, and I'm probably going to score 20 and have 20 assists.
That's a good career for me. That's a good career for me.
Okay, so I don't think it has anything to do with missing Gensel. I think it's just, Father Time is undefeated. He doesn't have much else around him. It's probably just an early season. I don't even want to call it a slump. It's just an early season little blip. I think it's unfair to expect Crosby to have 90 points this year. I mean, at some point, he's got to come down a little bit,
Right, yeah.
It's just insane. I mean, the guy, at this rate, I think he's going to end up with probably somewhere around Messier's point total when his career is all said and done.
That's pretty fair.
And Messier was what, like 1850 in that neighborhood?
Yep.
And Crosby just got to 1600. I think he gets there. He's just that otherworldly guy. But look, Father Time literally waits for no one.
Right, it's true.
So, yeah, maybe he takes maybe he takes a fraction of a step back this year. Instead of 90 points, he has 80 points.
Man.
Anyone in Pittsburgh really going to complain Sidney Crosby had 80 points? He is this year?
No.
If one of those people complain, throw him off the top of the roof of PPG Paints Arena. Throw him off the roof.
No, exactly. No, I agree. All right, one more before we wrap this up, because there's a lot of waves being made out there right now. Obviously, the defensive market, top 4 defensemen, got to go out to Edmonton, right? All of a sudden, we're hearing the rumblings. Darren Dreger saying they're looking for top 4 defensemen. Gee, I thought you had that in Philip Broberg. Yeah, he's now in St. Louis, and I understand, right? Come in, the offer sheet, it's 2 years, 4.5. You're not sure, right? Then you hear the names that they're looking at, all potentially like a Murphy that's making 4.7, Werenski, he's making like 4.4. All right, was 4.5 that terrible when you made all the moves? and Broberg's thriving in St. Louis. And again, opportunity in different scenario and timelines. But you're seeing the way the Oilers defense is playing, and you saw the way he played in the playoffs. And again, he wasn't there, Bowman, but a lot of everybody else in management was, and understands how important he was. You kind of feel like that one maybe they regret.
They do regret it. And I mean, look, when Broberg signed and it was, and when the news came out about the offer sheet, I have it told that a lot of Edmonton players were absolutely irate with the situation. Absolutely irate. McDavid and Draisaitl too were absolutely angry as all heck that, with that situation. I think Bowman got put into an impossible task there. Yes, he's got his lieutenants around him who have seen Broberg in the year before and all that stuff. But he had just been hired. Edmonton completely mismanaged that whole thing of Holland to Bowman. Like, that whole situation was just a mess. So that's for starters. Not to make any excuses, but it's a fact. That whole thing was a mess. I think that, should Bowman have tried to done better with that? Yes, but it just feels to me like it was just one of those perfect storms of calamity where you've got a new GM coming in who, his lieutenants are familiar with the guy, but he's not. You've got, the Draisaitl contract. You've got the McDavid thing hanging over. You've still had the other offer sheet. I forget the guy's name.
Holloway was offer sheeted alongside.
So and I had that.
So I thought Broberg, they would have matched Broberg because they move out CC. You bring in Podkolzin. Okay, Podkolzin fills the role of Holloway. Okay, that makes sense. And then they both are gone. And I'm like, and now you've lost CC too, and you already lost Desharnais. And I'm like, all right, so what are we doing?
To me, it was just, yes, was it mismanaged? Yes, they should have tried to keep Broberg. I feel it was just that perfect storm of calamity where it was just, you know what? Forget the perfect storm. It was Murphy's Law. Just anything that can go wrong will go wrong. And that was Edmonton's situation right then. There. It sounds like an excuse. It sounds like I'm giving them a cop out, and I'm not. But that is the way, to me, in my gut, that's just how Edmonton went with it. Rarely do teams get hit with an offer sheet.
Right.
When the hell has any team ever been hit with two offer sheets at the same time?
It's rare, if ever.
And when has a team been hit by two offer sheets at the same time with a new incoming general manager, with having to give a new biggest contract in history to one of their star players and still make sure that they have for their absolute star a contract that's even going to break the bit? Never and before this happened. That's just, in my personal honest opinion, it was just that situation in Edmonton where they were going to be damned if they do, damned if they don't, and they were just going to get screwed no matter what. And I give Armstrong in St. Louis credit.
100%.
Full advantage of it. He was playing 4D chess while everyone else was playing checkers. And that's the only way to describe it, and Edmonton's suffering for it right now.
No, 100%. Do you think, one more, do you think that, and I'm, again, this is nothing I've heard or, written about or anything, but do you think, potentially Jeff Jackson should have stepped in there and been like, look, we got to keep Broberg here?
I don't think Jeff Jackson has the wherewithal to have made that decision. Jeff Jackson's a business guy. Not to say that he doesn't know hockey. I've never spoken with the guy personally in a one-on-one situation, so I don't want to disparage whatever knowledge he may have. But you're bringing in a GM for a reason. You're bringing in Bowman of all people, and remember why Bowman was available in the first place.
Yeah, exactly. Everybody knows about that one.
So I think when it comes to business people should not get involved on the hockey side, just like hockey people should not get involved on the business side. There's a reason why the two sides are kept separate.
Mm-hmm. I like it.
It's just that Edmonton had a messy situation, and no matter what, something was going to go wrong. And you know what? It did. It is. And now they have to live with it.
No, I 100% agree. I mean, look, tough situation for everybody. After free agency, everything gets hit. it just goes like that. Cloud of smoke just comes out of nowhere, like RKO, I guess, since we got to wrap up, all these wrestling terms, baseball terms, everything here on the Full Press NHL podcast. But guys, check out Matthew Blittner, Sportsology. He does great work. What else you got coming up if you want to promote anything here on the podcast?
So Russ Tolan and I have a new book coming out. I want to call it about 6 weeks, but don't hold me to that. It's called Game Winners, the greatest game-winning goals in hockey history, in which we list out and explain the 50 greatest game-winning goals in hockey history. Combination of playoffs, Olympics, regular season, overtime, regulation, shootout. We got it all in there, as well as a number of honorable mentions. And, so I've got that, obviously, every week at Sportsology, along with just the regular Devils coverage. Also, the Blittner's Blue Line weekly column, in which, we always go around the league looking for interesting things to talk about. And before I go, I see a Cody Cutter coming your way. He's standing right behind you. I see the shadow right behind you, right? So,
yes.
The Cody Cutter is about to come hit you, so I'd turn around if I were you.
If people don't know, running joke with at Prudential Center. Actually, it's not a running joke. It's more of a feud. Me and the Prudential Center crowd, when Cody Rhodes' theme song comes on and the woe is going, it is a year-long battle. Me and Cody's going to meet up somewhere come time WrestleMania season. I'm going to get mine from Cody Rhodes as I play that dastardly heel. But it's always fun to talk hockey, wrestling, baseball, whatever here. Full Press NHL podcast. Good colleague, Matthew Blittner from Sportsology. Again, Russ Cohen's been on the program as well. Those guys do great work. Go check out the book when it comes out. I'm not going to hold you to that timeline. I know some others might, but I'm not going to. Matthew, thank you so much for coming on here today.
Thanks for having me, Jim. It's been a pleasure.
Guys, check it out. Full Press NHL podcast up YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. Take care. Enjoy the regular season. We'll be back again soon.
Barry Trotz, Nashville Predators, making sure you're listening to Full Press Hockey Podcast.